And now, part one of Tell City, the first 50 years from Joe Lee Productions and my friend, Lee Pennington.
This is the story of Tell City, an attractive little town on the banks of the Ohio River in south central Indiana. Tell City is one of the few places in the world that was planned, financed, and partly constructed before the first settlers arrived. The Tell City pioneers were Swiss and German immigrants fleeing oppression and conflict. In 1856, in Cincinnati, several immigrants met at Charles Steiner's grocery store and formed the Swiss Colonization Society with the sole purpose of purchasing land and forming culturally compatible towns. By selling shares, the society raised $160,000, a remarkable amount at that time. After raising the money, the society sent a team downriver to search out a promising location for an industrial settlement. They first turned down land in Missouri because it was a slave state, and then purchased a little more than 4,000 acres in Perry County, Indiana, a free state, at a price just over $85,000, or about $20 an acre. The land, not suited for farming, was covered with a dense forest and had swamps along the riverfront. High hills at the back reminded some settlers of the small village homes they had left in Switzerland. After first naming their city Helvetia, a poetic name for Switzerland, the society changed the name to Tell City, which was easier for English-speaking people to remember and pronounce. The name, of course, honored William Tell, legendary hero and liberator of Switzerland. Land chosen for Tell City was not totally a virgin site. Several homes and buildings were already scattered along a plank road that followed the river down from Campbellton, hugging the foothills most of the way.
Upper end of Main Street, which originally was part of the old plank road, went up through here, came from Jasper. Before Tell City was even here, went up to Tell Street, turned left for a half a block, and then turned right, went up that alley all the way to almost to the end of town. This is part of the old plank road. You can see how the very earliest houses in Tell City were built facing the old plank road, and it lies halfway between 9th and 10th Street, and that's Washington Street on the far end and Gutenberg on the other end of this section. Came down this alley and turned and went up to Campbellton and the old plank road.
A small stone house, used as an early community center, school, and shelter, stood on a hill overlooking Windy Creek.
This is the old stone house, which is the oldest house in Tell City, and was actually here when Swiss County first arrived, and they bought it as part of the 4,000 acres, and it was a big farm. The hill sloped down on both sides, and they used it for a public building for a while after they first got here, but then when they moved uptown, why, it was too far away.
All settlers labored under the same rules. Each shareholder had to, within 1 year of his arrival, erect a brick or frame house not less than $125 in value. The society immediately made provisions to loan money to new businesses. Within 1 year, besides numerous retail stores and a hotel, the city had 3 sawmills, a shingle factory, 2 brickyards, 2 breweries, a planing mill, a blacksmith shop, a plow and wagon factory, a furniture factory, and a flour mill.
One time was 2 hotels, as you can see, kind of a divider in between, and that was the earliest hotels in town. That's the home of the old National Bank, which was the first bank in Tell City, and this was its second home place. Originally it was up there by the depot, but this was the first permanent home they had, and served Tell City for probably 75 years before they built a new one down on Franklin Street.
The well-planned streets, 70 to 80 feet wide, have always been an element of pride for the citizens.
This is the original Tell Street, and it was the original Main Street, planned to be the original Main Street. Down here where it runs to the river, unfortunately they had a big sandbar and they couldn't land boats there. So they had to change the Main Street to 8th Street. Once they found out they couldn't land boats on the river here at Tell Street, they switched and started landing the boats up on the far end, the south end of town, and that's where the factories all started and so on.
The Founding Fathers decided at the outset not to name any street after a king or tyrant. Streets running north and south were numbered, but the ones going east and west were named for great men of letters, the arts and sciences, names such as Washington, Jefferson, Franklin, Gutenberg, Pestalozzi, Humboldt, Fulton, Schiller, Mozart, Rubens, Tell, and Watt. Even with such distinguished names, most of the new streets were impassable by foot or wagon during bad weather. The first church was established by the Catholics in 1859. When the bishop arrived to dedicate a modest little frame building, he refused. The bishop said too many church members were home grubbing stumps out of their yards instead of attending their religious duties as they should on Sunday. Although the parishioners wanted to name the church St. William in honor of William Tell's patron saint, the bishop suggested that St. Paul, apostle of the heathens, be selected the patron saint. Greenwood, Tell City Cemetery, began in 1862.
This was the first cemetery after the settlers got here. Very early they bought this land and formed this Greenwood Cemetery.
Citizens built the first school in 1859. Classes were taught in both English and German. In addition to reading, writing, and arithmetic, the curriculum also included yodeling. A fire in 1862 destroyed one of the school buildings. It was replaced by a brick building later known as the Old South School. In 1860, the Tell City Fire Company was organized. Fire cisterns were located at principal street crossings and intersections. In 1893, the city created a library association and books were kept in Schreiber's drugstore. In 1905, the superintendent of schools established a city library, which became a meeting place and a storehouse for records. The new settlement was incorporated in 1859 and became a city in 1886. A mere 8 years after settlement, Tell City products were rolling on the river. During just a 2-week period, the city exported 300,000 pounds of castings, 200 beds and bureaus, 400 dozen chairs, 20 cotton presses, 2 hay presses, 100 sacks of carded wool and cloth, 200 barrels of flour, 50 half barrels of beer, 20,000 feet of flooring and doors, 500 new kegs, 20 marble gravestones, 25 pairs of bellows, 6 wagons, and 12 spinning wheels. When Tell City was only 6 months old, the newspaper said, "Tell City is a marvel. There is nothing like its history and progress, and it has no precedent. It now has 11 miles of street, 70 feet wide through the forest, 1,500 people and 300 houses. This union of German and Swiss, of energy and economy, of thrift and industry, will accomplish wonders." Life in Tell City was not always as rosy as the Candleton newspaper reported. Some of the settlers simply ran out of money and had to return to their previous homes. Times were often lean for many who stayed. A Tell City Furniture Company employee said he'd worked a whole year before he was paid his first $5 in cash. And tradition has it that at the Tell City Chair Company, employees made chairs during the day, then carried them home at night, where family members helped weave the double cane seats. They carried the finished chairs back the next day to begin again. In addition to their struggles with daily living, Tell City citizens also endured the Civil War, where the Home Guard was twice called up to protect against Morgan's raiders, the Panic of 1873, and the devastating flood of 1884. Even as they sometimes struggled, the people of Tell City always realized the factories and businesses were their lifeblood. Managers and employees alike worked side by side.
This one over here was built by the Hares, H-A-R-R-E-R. He was one of the first managers of the Tell City Furniture Company. Tell City Furniture Company was kind of a socialistic experiment in a way, because there was 18 or 20 men got together and formed an organization and built this Tell City Furniture Company, and they had no owners, no stockholders, and they worked many times without any money at all, trying to sell their products, get stuff going on their products. And right here shows how in the early days they would, the managers and the bosses would all build real close to the factory. Yeah, that was the original Tell City Furniture Company, which was one of the original manufacturing companies in Tell City, and was one of the most important. At one time they hired as many as 850 men. It's now been taken over by the William Tell Woodcrafters, by the Boarders, and they've done a terrific job keeping it going.
While busily engaged in building Tell City and developing the industries, the Swiss and German forebears did not forget the elements which made life enjoyable. One of the settlers said, "The German and Swiss always had a good appetite, a wonderful thirst, and a jovial spirit. These were fun-loving people." This has always been a beer-drinking community.
Ronnie's Bar, which was originally the first bar probably in town, Einziegler. The Einziegler owned it and operated it for years and years, and it's still in operation.
During the first few months of the settlement, at least 3/4 of the crude log houses displayed the sign, "Beer." By 1869, Tell City had about 2,400 inhabitants and 24 saloons. That's one for each 100 citizens, women and children included. Two local breweries supplied these saloons, about 3/4 of which had a beer garden, where whole families would gather on a Sunday afternoon and on evenings to have a jolly good time, singing, talking, drinking beer, and smoking cigars.
You're looking at the original Tell City Brewery, which started very shortly after Tell City was founded and supplied all the beer for miles around for years and years.
While they enjoyed their beer and wine, the Swiss and German settlers were not disorderly or boisterous. One settler said, "We don't even need a constable."
And that pretty much wraps up this edition of the Oopa Loopa Cafe, the 14th of January 2013. I'm glad you could join us and spend part of your lunch hour with us today. Be sure and tune in tomorrow when we have more of Temerity Magazine, as well as part 2 of Tell City the First 50 Years, coming from Jolie Productions. I'm Rick Osmond, and this is the Oopa Loopa Cafe. Thanks again. See you.
Yes.